Thank you, Senators, for the opportunity to appear before you here today, and apologies for my croaky voice. I'm recovering from the flu, but university governance is such an important issue to our union, I wanted to come anyway. So, across our public universities, governance is broken. The National Tertiary Education Union has long argued that many public university councils and senates no longer function in a democratic, transparent or as accountable bodies. Today, I'm here to provide evidence in the form of our latest national report that demonstrates the failure of governance and how these problems are growing worse. Our report is based on elected staff representatives, both union members and non-members, and it paints a disturbing picture, a sector where intimidation, secrecy and exclusion have become routine features of governing culture and bodies. 59% of respondents described the culture on the university's boards as very negative, toxic, intimidating and even hostile to dissent. Describing the attitude of one chancellor who chaired meetings, a survey respondent said they were aggressive, biased and that dissenters were bullied collectively by their group, and the Chancellor actively discouraged debate. 57% said their contributions had no genuine impact. Many felt that decisions had already been made before meetings had even begun. 71% were barred from reporting back, and I find this deeply shocking, were barred from reporting back to the same staff who elected them. 90% said basic government documents, like governance documents are like agendas, papers and minutes, were not publicly available. And only 19% were confident in their board's ability to identify and address emerging issues. Our public universities have become overly corporatised, governed behind closed doors by people with little connection to the daily realities that staff and students face. The consequences for staff and students and the fabric of our universities have been catastrophic. We've seen hundreds of millions of dollars in wage theft, headlined by $72 million in underpayments at the University of Melbourne alone. And at a smaller regional campus, the University of Wollongong, the figure is $18 million. And these are just two examples. There is a hiring-firing yo-yo that screams of poor workforce planning. In the latest example of this hiring and firing yo-yo, there are estimated 1,500 jobs slated to be cut in New South Wales alone. And this shrinks courses and subject offerings for students who are also hurt by the loss of critical support staff. Teaching and research has been hollowed out while our vice-chancellors receive million-dollar salaries, and more than 300 university executives earn more than their state premiers. Private consultants were paid more than $700 million in a single year. At UTS, there was more than $5 million paid to consultants KPMG to tell management how to save money, and this is leading to 400 cuts to 400 key roles. There is a culture of managerialism that devalues academic voice and silences dissent. The evidence shows that many governing bodies are actively hostile to transparency, diversity and democratic participation. Union members on board have reported being bullied, marginalised and excluded from key discussions, particularly those relating to industrial matters or matters of staff and student wellbeing. Our analysis showed last year that 27% of all positions on university councils and senates were appointees from the corporate world. This is not good governance. This is why the NTEU is calling for urgent and systemic reform. What we want to see is at least 50% elected membership on university boards, with staff and students and alumni given real voice and real power. Appointed members with genuine public sector or tertiary education experience, not just corporate CVs. Executive pay brought back into line with community expectations. Full transparency on board deliberations, consultancy relationships and conflicts of interest. And above all, governance structures supported by a new national framework that reflects universities' purpose as public institutions, not private businesses. Universities must act as exemplary employees, prioritising the well-being and rights of the people who make education and research possible. The current governance model is failing that test. The report that we're presenting to you today confirms what NTEU members have been saying for many years. We must end the corporatisation of higher education and rebuild university governance so it functions in the public interest. Thank you all, and I welcome your questions, and apologies once again for the croaky voice.
Thank you, Dr Barnes. Dr Clohesy.
Thank you. My name is Dr Lachlan and I'm the Division Secretary of the ACT Division of the National Tertiary Education Union. We have members at universities based in the ACT, which are the Australian National University and the University of Canberra. We also have members at other universities which operate in the ACT, including the University of New South Wales, Australian Catholic University and Charles Sturt University. We welcome the opportunity to present to the inquiry. We believe that this inquiry is necessary to shine a light on some of the practices of university leadership and governance in Australia. We hope that identifying some of the problems can begin the process of university governance reform. My opening statement primarily deals with the Australian National University, which is where the majority of our members are located, and which, as Australia's national university, is the only university governed by a Commonwealth Act. In discussing the Australian National University, however, I want to be clear that we love the ANU. That is because, along with students, our members are the ANU. We are unfortunately at a point where our national university needs protection from its own leadership. Unfortunately, the ANU has experienced multiple failures of leadership and governance in the last several years. We've had mass job cuts, $2.4 million in wage theft, new wage theft concerns, financial mismanagement, serious conflicts of interest, an attempt to remove a staff pay rise, potential contempt of the Senate, obstruction of right of entry permits, and serious revelations of widespread cultural problems. There are other issues which relate more tangentially to governance, but are nonetheless problematic in terms of both leadership style and equity concerns, such as decisions to close childcare centres on campus and to increase parking fees by 277% in 1 year. In one of the most callous comments in relation to job losses, ANU Chancellor Julie Bishop was reported in media referring to ANU staff as inefficiencies. In March 2025, we conducted a ballot of members as a vote of no confidence in the leadership of the ANU Chancellor and Vice-Chancellor. This was supported by more than 95% of the 800 plus ANU staff who participated. I'll detail some of the issues before and since this vote which demonstrate why confidence in university leadership and governance is so low. The most pressing concern is job cuts and the damage they do to the ANU. The ANU is its people and their livelihoods and health are being negatively impacted. However, important national institutions such as the Australian National Dictionary Centre, the Centre for European Studies, the Humanities Research Centre, the ANU School of Music and more are looking at being disestablished altogether. The official launch of these consultant-driven job cuts was the announcement of Renew ANU on 3rd of October 2024, though staff reductions started earlier. The stated aim of Renew ANU was to reduce annual expenditure by $250 million, including an annual reduction in salaries of $100 million. This was on the basis of a projected $200 million underlying operating deficit for 2024. This was a Q3 projection, and ANU budgets are based on calendar years. That figure was repeated by the Chief Financial Officer in a town hall for ANU staff on 12th of December 2024, only 19 days from the end of the year. However, we now know that the underlying operating deficit was $142.5 million. This favourable $60 million variance undermines confidence that ANU leadership actually knows what they're cutting, the financial progress they're making, or how to track it. It only fuels speculation that financial issues are exaggerated to justify job cuts. This variance also didn't result in an adjustment to overall savings goals. All of this happens without genuine consultation or transparency. The Vice-Chancellor doesn't show staff the respect to front up to town halls. We now know that ANU reduced annual salary expenditure by $30 million in 2024 prior to Renew ANU, due in large part to the restrictions of the ANU's Recruitment Approval Committee, or RAC. This means that ANU leadership is actually looking to cut $130 million of salary expenditure. We know that not because ANU transparently disclosed it, but through Freedom of Information requests. Since the 1st of April 2024, ANU's Workplace Gender Equality Agency submission shows a net decline in staff headcount of 797 until 31st of March 2025. Since then, there have been approximately 175 voluntary separations and a further 125 occupied positions proposed to be made redundant. That takes the total to 1,097 people. In full-time equivalent terms, figures provided by ANU show a net reduction in FTE of 522.1 from the end of March 2024 to end of June 2025, which is in addition to the 125 positions, or 124.34 FTE, recently proposed to be disestablished. That is a total of 646.44 FTE since end of March 2024, including job cuts proposed. It is important to note that any discussion limited to forced redundancies misses the voluntary separations, the fixed-term contracts not renewed, the casuals not re-engaged, and the vacancies not filled after staff who have had enough of ANU's poor culture have left. We're talking more than 12% of staff gone or proposed to be gone, and ANU leadership is not done. We're expecting an as-yet undisclosed number of additional job losses to be announced later this week. ANU leadership continues to blame government policy on students, including international students, for this, but we also now know that ANU did not hit their international student caps for 2025. I don't have time to detail everything that has happened at ANU, but I can tell you that these leadership and governance failures are destroying our national university, for which the Commonwealth has legislative responsibility. And ANU staff and students are desperate for change, but not more change management proposals.
Good morning, Senators. My name is Millan Pintos-Lopez. I've worked at the Australian National University since 2017 and have served as the President of the ANU NTEU branch since 2021. On the 2nd of May 2022, I was elected as the Professional Staff Representative on ANU Council. My first meeting took place on the 3rd of June 2022. From 30th of September 2022, I was informed of concerns regarding a potential conflict of interest related to my role on the bargaining team during enterprise bargaining. As a result, from the 7th of October 2022 council meeting onward, I was excluded from receiving budget and financial papers and was required to recuse myself from those agenda items. This was formally recorded in council minutes. Due to the prolonged nature of bargaining, this arrangement continued until December 2023. Following the conclusion of bargaining, I regained access to all standard council papers. My final meeting as a member of ANU Council was on the 5th of April 2024. During my time on Council, I was on the selection panel for the new Vice-Chancellor. The selection of the new Vice-Chancellor was announced in September 2023, with the tenure beginning on January 2024. In October 2024, the new Vice-Chancellor announced Renew ANU. This foreshadowed significant staff cuts and restructuring of the university, which is still ongoing. I was very vocal in my opposition to how Renew ANU was and is being managed and implemented on our community. On the 30th of January 2025, 6 months after my departure from Council, I received an unsigned email from the University Legal Office with a letter attached from Philip Harrison, the University's General Counsel, titled Reminder of Obligations of Confidentiality. Although the letter did not allege any wrongdoing, I found it deeply intimidating. I disclosed this to my supervisor at the time and sought advice from the union. While the letter claimed it had been sent to all recent council members, when I inquired among my peers, it appeared I was the only recipient. 2 weeks later, I was instructed by my director to begin submitting timesheets for any and all hours spent on union activities, despite having 40% time release as an entitlement in the enterprise agreement. This request, I understood, came directly from the Chief Operating Officer. Within days of that request, I was also informed by my supervisor that the Chief Operating Officer had specifically requested a copy of my performance development review. There are multiple reporting lines between me and the coup, and to my knowledge, no one else in the division received a similar request. This is not standard practice at the ANU. In over 8 years at the ANU, including during my time on council and as a union president, my performance development reviews and timesheets have never been requested at the executive level, nor have I ever received formal letters from university lawyers. I believe these actions were in direct response to my public criticism of the ANU's leadership decision to launch Renew ANU. And unfortunately, I have to say, the message was received. I felt intimidated. I began second-guessing my public statements and hesitated to speak to the media in my role as union president. I started removing my signature from union emails and relying on the division secretary for my communications. I genuinely feared for my job and had serious conversations with my partner about the possibility of being dismissed. The staff voice needs to be protected. As a union president and a formally elected representative on council, I believe it's my duty to speak up and not be intimidated. It is deeply concerning that the university I love has become a place where open dialogue and public debate is stifled. We need stronger protections and governance frameworks in place to protect not only me, but any elected representative who questions how executives are managing our public institutions. Thank you, Senators.
Thank you. Who would like to go next? Yes, Dr. Markham.
Thank you, Senators, and thank you for the invitation to appear here today. Please note that I am speaking in a personal capacity, and while I have been an ANU council member, I do not speak on behalf of the ANU. I relate only my personal experiences. I was elected as an academic staff representative on council in May 2025, and yesterday I tendered my resignation from that role. I resigned from the ANU council because of my concerns about governance practices within the council. Recent council meetings have revealed a fundamental disagreement regarding our interpretations of our roles. Efforts by other council members to seek information have been unsuccessful, as you heard from Mr. Burfoot earlier today. Attempts to move motions have not been permitted by the chair at times, as was reported by the Australian Financial Review, and again spoken to by Mr. Burfoot earlier. My experience has been that meeting procedures make it difficult at times to know what decisions have been made and at times limit full discussions. More recently, as was announced in the ANU staff newsletter, the Council has been subject to an external investigation into alleged misuse of confidential information. During this period of investigation, which coincides with a critical time in our university's restructuring process, oversight by Council has been restricted. In order to operate effectively, I believe that the Council must be empowered to deliberate, seek information and operate with transparency. I look forward to answering any questions that you have on these or other matters.
I note that you resigned from the ANU Council earlier this year as a result of some of the evidence you shared with us, as deeply distressing evidence. Can you tell the committee more about the culture within the ANU Council, how staff elected representatives may be seen by Council in your opinion, and I'd also like to understand from you how you would like to see transparency and accountability improved.
So the council situation at the ANU is very far removed from the very egalitarian system that exists across the university generally, and there is a very clear delineation between the appointed members who are appointed via a nominations committee, which is headed by the Chancellor, and the elected members who come through the staff via an elected process, or the students who come through a similar democratic process. People who have so-called skin in the game, those that work or study at the ANU, are outnumbered by people that rarely set foot on campus. And when the appointed members do come to campus, it's for official ceremonies and duties only. It's not ever to kind of operate or interact at the coalface, so to speak. So they're very out of touch with the reality of higher education, but more importantly, they're out of touch with the reality of what is happening at the ANU. So the Chancellor, I believe, behaves with godlike powers and unchecked with, say, for example, a Pro-Chancellor and a Vice-Chancellor. That means quite significant disregard for the university, I believe, and for having issues that are grassroots held and spoken about at the council. My experience with council is that there is a careful curation and manipulation of information that is presented to the council. Council never know what they don't know. And that is a deeply concerning issue. When matters arose that I became aware that what we were being told at council perhaps was not truthful, where I would challenge that, I would then become the aggressor, and I was portrayed as problematic and someone that needed to be quietened. And so dissent generally is not encouraged. Actually, it's discouraged. We are only allowed to, and I should say I'm no longer on council. This is my experience while on council. While I was on council, we were only entitled to either one question or one comment per agenda item. That meant foregoing important questions that needed to be answered, and there was an attitude that was, I felt, highly dismissing of any legitimate concerns. On one occasion, I raised an issue around student and staff morale, and the Pro-Chancellor responded and said something to the effect of that they hadn't seen that or they weren't aware of that. I'm a senior lecturer. I teach. That's my day job. I'm interacting with staff and students. And to have the appointed member that I don't believe has set foot on a university campus in a teaching capacity since their university days is just gobsmacking to me. So that's the kind of culture that is developed. One of fear, one of intimidation, but one of carefully orchestrated cinema to make it appear that what's happening is legitimate, but in actual fact it's not. Most concerning for me was there were issues where, and this was the final straw for me, was that there were mounting communications presented to the ANU community or the media as council saying this. And they were, I believe, factually incorrect. And one was the final straw for me was that there was a council meeting in March whereby we discussed the ANU staff vote of no confidence and an open letter. And I said that the University Council could not dismiss the significance of these things because they were coming to us via important channels. I was told that I was the only one that held that view, and the opportunity was not put to a vote where we could to actually vote as a council, but rather it was a decision made by the council that because I was the only dissenting one, that it was a non-event, and more importantly, a public statement was released by the council. Obviously, I had nothing to do with it. I asked to see it, and I was told by the Pro-Chancellor that I would not be able to look at it before it was published. It basically said that the council had full support or full confidence in the leadership. That was not true. And so this idea that council acts as a block stifles dissent and is misused in a way to shut down voices that might be different, or even preemptively shut people up so that they don't dissent, because we're made examples of quite publicly.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. I want to ask you a question now as it relates to your experience at the ANU Centre for Social Policy Research. We know ratios of teaching, scholarship research are so important in the backbone of our sector, the sector, and, go to the heart of quality in these institutions. We've heard evidence over the course of this inquiry around the impact of the casualisation of the workforce on these things. I'm interested in your experience on staff. Have you seen the impacts of casualisation on these factors? What sort of pressures is it placing on fellow academics?
So I have been I've had an affiliation with the university since 2008, first in a student capacity for 1 year and then on staff and as a student. I was in casual employment in and out of various contracts until I believe 2021. So I only was given security at that point, and I thank my lucky stars that I did get it. There is a reliance on casualisation, and it is used in a way that I kind of think that maybe the university sees people as being disposable, as kind of like replaceable, and there's this kind of stream of people coming in and out being used, and once their day is done, they're kind of out. And it's highly disrespectful, and it's highly troubling for people to get security. I wasn't able to apply for a home loan, for example. I wasn't able to apply for any kind of significant loan to be able to then establish my children and so on, and their well-being. So casualisation in my day-to-day is just there. It's what concerns me, though, of late is that the university established what's known as the RAC, the Recruitment Approval Committee, which I think that's the acronym, but it's affectionately known as the RAC, and it is as painful and torturous as it sounds. Basically, anyone who their contract comes to an end, if they are to be extended, even in consistent practice with the enterprise agreement, their so-called job card must go through the RAC. The case must be mounted. Now, the university will tell you that something like 90% of cases that go forward to the RAC, their positions are extended or their positions are created. But there are multiple layers before you can even get to the RAC. So most fall short before they even get to the RAC. And it got to a point of late, it was instituted in 2024, I believe, the RAC, where the RAC have said we're so overwhelmed with contracts coming to an end, don't bother sending us continuation or new job cards, but particularly continuations, until they're 2 weeks from their cessation date. 2 weeks. Someone that may have worked for the university for 3 years is given 2 weeks. 2 weeks before they decided whether or not the university will keep you or let you go out with the trash. What we're finding is I've had a colleague who, on the last day of their contract, found out the outcome of the RAC, the last day of their contract. I've seen others not be reappointed. What that means is our workloads are increasing, and what the university will tell you that student numbers are lower. I have seen my class an undergraduate first year course, go from like 130, 140 to now 200 and over 240 as of today. We've had to put on additional tutorials, and I fear for these young people who don't have the kind of pastoral care that they require, especially in this kind of learning environment. It's impacting students, undeniably, and it's impacting staff because we are working well and above our scheduled and paid hours, let me tell you, just to stand still. You know, it feels like we're running just to stand still. And we're being under-resourced, We're being forced to do more with less money, and this narrative of cost cutting doesn't align with what we're seeing on the ground by way of the money that we're bringing in through research and, of course, through teaching.